7 Ways to Annihilate Sufferings by Using the Method of Making the Mind to Work in Accordance with the Will. Thich Thong Lac, extracted from the Buddha's original teachings. Nhung Loi Gok Phat Day, Book 2, permitted to print and disseminate by T.G. 2011, pp. 60-90. Buddha's Teachings. Because, thanks for using the method of making the mind to work in accordance with the will, the unborn sufferings will not arise, and the born sufferings have been born will annihilated. Because 1/sufferings must be eradicated by knowledge, 2/sufferings must be eradicated by protection, 3/sufferings must be eradicated by receiving, 4/sufferings must be eradicated by endurance, 5/sufferings must be eradicated by avoided, 6/sufferings must be eradicated by annihilation, 7/sufferings must be eradicated by cultivation. Note: above are the Buddha's teachings on the method of making the mind to work in accordance with the will. The method of making the mind to work in accordance with the will uses to practice the mind without suffering. In Buddhism, the highest level is the mind without suffering. When the mind without suffering, that person becomes Arahant. Here, this teaching shows us to cultivate the mind without adversity, the practice to end misery. Buddha's teachings are very practical and specific. Nevertheless, in Buddhism has other teachings which does not teach us how to avoid suffering, but it teaches us to perceive the nature of Buddha. When the perception of the nature of Buddha is complete, the mind still cannot eradicate all sufferings. So, when he already became a Buddha, but he still has sufferings. So, what does the Buddha mean? Enlightened Buddha nature, enlightened this world is false, is illusory. Understanding is one thing, but want to live a mind immobilized must practice with the best. Would you answer it? That is an incorrect understanding of heresy by their imagination, isn't it? Between the two current Buddhist, Theravada, and Mahayana, what suttas are correct? To have precise answer, only the practitioner whose mind without suffering can tell. So, at the present time, Buddhist monk can live without suffering, mastering birth, aging, sickness, death and master reincarnation termination. Values of monks are at the minds without sufferings. These monks whose minds are without sufferings could justify which Buddhist is correct or incorrect, have enough confidence in the answers. Is that true, my friends? Buddhists practice to eliminate sufferings, but not to recite Buddha's name for rebirth in the Western paradise. Nevertheless, the Pure Land method specializes in reciting name of Amitabha Buddha to achieve single-mindedly. In 7 days continuously recite the name of Amitabha. The mind do not be disturbed by anything else. But when the mind is single-mindedly by reciting the name of Amitabha, the illusion world will appear. Those who recite Buddha's name think the paradise world is real. They do not know it appears by elusive thought. That ones reciting Buddha's name thought, the ones who recite the Buddha name with single-minded, then sufferings will be extinguished. That idea is very wrong, unbelievable, because reciting the Buddha's name to achieve single-mindedly mindless compressed the mind rather than terminate sufferings. So practitioners can't eradicate their sufferings. Is that correct? Reconsider Theravada texts. The Buddha taught us to destroy directly evilness, very clear and specific. It is the method of making the mind to work in accordance with the will. Be cautious, my friends, and the method of making the mind to work in accordance with the will is the right practice of Buddhism. You must have a lucid mind to judge. Do not let pagans lure you in the wrong view, wrong meditation, wrong concentration, wrong reciting Buddha's name, etc. If you want to get mind free from suffering, we have 7 practices to make the mind works in accordance with the will, as follows. The first way, the Buddha taught, there are sufferings to be eradicated by knowledge. So the first Dhamma is to use knowledge to eradicate. So what is knowledge? Knowledge is the understanding by consciousness. Thanks to consciousness, we use the method of making the mind to work in accordance with the will. Sufferings will be ceased. But consciousness has 2 sides. 1/wrong view, it is the evil consciousness. 2/right view, it is the wholesome consciousness. The wholesome consciousness called right view. Thanks to wholesome consciousness, with it we break evil away to eradicate sufferings. If we want to have good knowledge, we must meet the saint, the great man, listen to him, thoroughly understand the Dhamma, then practice as the Buddha often taught in the Sutta. Because there is an ordinary person who does not meet and listen to the saint, and unskillful in the Dhamma's training, has not practiced the Dhamma, has not seen the great men, has not skillful in Dhamma's training, has not practiced their Dhammas. So, we must know and use carefully the method of making the mind to work in accordance with the will. The requirement of using that method is to get rid of greed, anger, hatred, ignorance, and 5 desires of sensual pleasures, fame, wealth, sexual impurity, eating and sleeping. For example, when my mind has hatred, I know my mind having hatred. Knowing hatred is an evil that makes my mind suffers. The knowledge of hatred and suffering is the volition knowledge. If I would like to end to these sufferings, I have as of the reason liberation to use the method of making the mind to work in accordance with the will. Mean feeling of anger are sufferings. Do not feelings of anger are not sufferings. But I would like to end this suffering. I have as of the reason liberation to use the method of making the mind to work in accordance with the will. Means the mind feels of anger is suffering. The mind does not feel of anger is not suffering. Here is a phrase: the using of intention knowledge as reasons for cessation of suffering. Hatred is suffering, arises from the body and mind, or hatred is suffering. I do not accept you. You must leave here. These are the choice right characteristic of every practitioner. That 7 factors of enlightenment called the choose, investigation, factor of enlightenment, using the knowledge to eradicate the suffering. We should read the following passage. We will see the Buddha taught very clear and specific about how to use the volition knowledge. Because what is suffering to be rid of from knowledge by eradication? Because there is an ordinary person that is little to hear, does not see the sages, does not skill in the Dhammas of the sages, does not practice Dhammas of the saint, does not see the great men, does not practice their Dhammas, does not skill in their Dhammas, does not know the thing needs have the method of making the mind to work in accordance with the will, does not know the thing needs not have this method. This bhikkhu does not know the thing needs have this method. Because he does not know the thing needs have this method, he should use this method. The thing needs not have this method, and does not use this method. The thing needs have this method. Because, and how is the thing need not have the method of making the mind to work in accordance with the will that he gives? Because, thing by which he gives the method of making the mind to work in accordance with the will, unborn suffering, dukkha, is born, or suffering was born in growth, or possession suffering, tu'ulao, will be born, possession suffering was born in growth, or ignorant suffering, vomin lao, is born, ignorant suffering was born in growth. These are things need not have the method of making the mind to work in accordance with the will, but the bhikkhu gives. Because And how is the thing needs have the method of making the mind to work in accordance with the will, but he does not give. Because the thing which he gives the method of making the mind to work in accordance with the will, the sufferings unborn do not arise, or the sufferings were born to eradicate, or possession sufferings unborn do not arise, or the possession sufferings were born to eradicate, or ignorant sufferings unborn do not arise, or the ignorant sufferings we're born to eradicate. Those are things which need to give the method of making the mind to work in accordance with the will, but the bhikkhu does not give. Because those are things called sufferings must be rid of by knowledge. Read the above passages. Surely you withdraw away to practice to eradicating the suffering by the knowledge volition very real and specific. Do not it, my friends? We quote this passage of you to aware Buddhist meditation is a kind of discharging the mind, not the kind of suppressing the mind as the patriarchs was misunderstood, then misled Buddhists, causing loss to the Buddhist path. And now, the patriarchs have left a forest sutra of Mahayana and Zen which led the Buddhists into the labyrinth of illusions meditation. No doubt, the more practice the more fame and pelf, the more fame and pelf the more they built big temples, big Buddha statues and big ego. Their egos are bigger, therefore they often discuss, argue with each other, etc. So funny. They only discuss and argue for submerging true Buddhism, but undoubted they also exposed their back for others to see their scars, without shame. We should sympathize with them because Buddhist lineage through many patriarchs and through many countries, then surely there must be some discrepancies that we have together not only to retrieve but to ameliorate the true Buddhism. The wrongdoing and adversity already affected the believer's spirit. The ones who are responsible for that are the bhikkhus, bhikkhunis and followers as well. You must get rid of the idea assumes that all what the patriarchs did are perfect. It's most hazardous if patriarchs do not practice much but have the skill of writing and editing the texts, as their practice is still superficial. They just live with Ilshan ideas, so their lineage easily deflected Buddhist path. Is that correct? We respect and love the patriarchs, but not because of that we follow them to practice their teaching. Before the Buddha entered Nibbana, understanding the follower's psychology, he left a will to his disciples, take my precepts and my teachings as the teachers, as a solid shelter. Precepts still exist, Buddhism still exists, precepts lost, Buddhism lost too. Therefore, when you see monks, nuns and lay people live transgression, breaking the precepts, so no matter how much they already practiced the highest Dhamma, we also know that they are practicing the Dhamma of pagans. Do you think it is correct? Dear friends,